I've got here what's called our mise en place, which means everything ready in its order. Just added some roughly chopped garlic. You don't want to chop it too fine because it'll burn very easily. Got a little bit of chilli in there. What we need to do then is season prawns with a salt and a bit of pepper. This is a very easy dish to make at home actually, because it hasn't got a lot of ingredients. So we say not changing the wheel in our culinary way. So very few ingredients put together but fresh. For time purposes, we've pre-blanched the pasta already. Traditionally we would cook it fresh and put it in the pan. But I've got that going and that took me like 15-20 minutes to do that. I'm going to be resubmerging it in salted boiling water. I'm going to be reblanching it. This is also, again, starting with my little story there, this is also the base of a garlic prawns. But instead of using white wine, I'm using brandy. Now this is for the diet conscious, just a little bit of cream. We come from a very rich agricultural area up north. All the prosciuttos, the mozzarellas, the cheeses, the cheese, the parmigiano, and a lot of meat. We've been quite blessed with that. So I've just sort of reblanched the pasta. It's still at an al dente state. It means that it should just have a wee bit of bite to the tooth when you're eating the pasta, so it almost sticks to the tooth. But it's one of those things that then you need to go up the gym, eh? So yeah, but it tastes fantastic. You can't replace the taste. As it gets beyond that al dente stage, the pasta becomes very mushy. Quite a bit of cheese. What it does is it acts as an enricher and it also acts as a binder. As you can tell there, see, between the cream reducing and the addition of the cheese there, it's starting to thicken up. We've got about 3 or 4 serves in here. It's a signature dish for us. But again, not very hard to make.
It looks very yummy.
Yeah, it's very yummy. Yeah, the chili's in here, yeah. I always use chili flake, not whole chili. The whole chilies vary in degrees of hotness. Sometimes half is not hot and sometimes a quarter is extremely hot. Whereas with a nice good grade of chili flake, you've got consistency within the spiciness of the dish. Yeah, that's grated parmesan I put in there, and that's block. And they're fresh prawns, they're not frozen. We don't use frozen prawns. Put a little bit of parmesan cheese there, a wee bit of parsley, and that's about it. The dish sort of sells itself, you know.
Well, Sophie, looks you are very enjoy these dishes and garlic prawn pasta. Yes. And telling me what they are tasty about.
You can taste the brandy. It's just beautiful in the cream, and the prawns are great.
Yeah.
Very fresh. Yeah, it's fantastic. Pasta's perfect. It's not. I don't like soft pasta. It's just right. And the parsley is really nice. And it's just really. I'll probably get fat if I eat too much, but that doesn't matter because it's too nice after
just
eat it.
Chili?
Yeah.
Without it being too hot.
Yeah, it's perfect. In the brandy, you can taste it. I have to find out where it is, but yeah. I didn't grow up in a cooking household, and so I don't cook. I'm really bad. I eat out or I get takeaway. Sometimes I have toast for dinner. But I wish I could cook. I might have to learn. I have to come here and learn to cook.
I just wanted to ask that, do you guys cook at home too? When you guys go home, do you cook for your wife and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I was quite fortunate that somebody cooked for me at home, and my wife is a very good cook. I've never cooked at home. I don't cook at home because I find it work and work. I leave the passion that I have on my stove at the restaurant, and when I go home I actually relax. I'm not allowed in the kitchen actually. But having said that, and both Deb and I we call ourselves professionals. We're no longer, one thing we didn't mention, we're no longer just tradespeople or cooks. We're actually professionals. We've been trained, we've done lots of extensive courses, so we actually call ourselves professionals these days. And to be a professional, you also need to be in touch with what's going on around you. And I would probably eat out about 8 times a week. Between breakfast, lunch and dinner, on average I would probably eat out between 8 or 10 times a week. And you need to do that because you need to broaden your horizons as far as taste goes, and you also need to see what's going on out there also and keep in touch with what's going on out there, because you can't just cocoon yourself and say that you're the best or what you do is the best. Probably Chef Deborah will concur with me, but our industry is actually what we call a living industry. it's forever changing. So some of the traditional dishes always stay the same, but it's a changing industry also. So and that's what makes it good to be in this particular industry.
Do you know Beppe?
Beppe Polonese. Well, Beppe Polonese is probably the patriarch of all Italian restaurants in Australia. I have great respect for Beppe because he opened a restaurant in the early 50s when Australians were not too... it was still sausages, steak and mash for them, really. And what he used to do actually was go down to Woolloomooloo, get the mussels and the prawns and the calamari that were brought in by the little trawlers those days at Woolloomooloo Wharf, and he actually used to give it to his diners for free. So that's a bit of an insight, you know, actually giving food for free to your diners, but he was quite a clever man because he was starting to indoctrinate the Australian customer in the Italian way of eating. And when there wasn't a lot of produce available, you couldn't go up the shop and buy prosciutto or mozzarella or parmesan, block parmesan. He was an absolute pioneer, and not enough credit is actually given to. I think just now there's been a couple of strong articles about him in the paper in the last few months. Yeah, but not enough. Look, he really should be, you know, for me, he almost should be knighted, because what he's done for the food industry in Australia, right out there, right in the 50s, and I was here in the 60s as a kid, and we used to struggle to find Italian produce. He was almost here 10 years before with a restaurant already. Absolutely amazing, and he's been in the same place, successful for, what is it now, 45, almost 50 years. So absolutely amazing.
He hasn't changed it much, has he?
He hasn't changed it. Why change it? People come to our place too, and we've been around since 72, so we've been around for 37 years ourselves. People say, oh, you still got the same menu. Well, you don't reinvent the wheel. You change a few specials, but your basics remain the same. I couldn't imagine going into either a Chinese restaurant without having san choy bao either. So why change it? So, okay.
And I was going to ask, do you have your own invention?
We were sort of pioneers as far as these creamy dishes go. My father, back in the late 60s, brought back the pasta machines from Italy when people weren't making their pasta. And he actually, back in 1975, he had an 8-page spread on him done in the Women's Weekly. Now, to get a half page in the Women's Weekly is a lot. We've actually got it documented in our house. 8 pages done on my father, from obviously the patriarch of our restaurant, in the Women's Weekly, of some of the innovative dishes that he brought to Australia that today we consider them very humble, like a tortellini boscaiola back in 1972 was not existent in Australia. Homemade fettuccine was not existent in Australia, and my dad actually brought back what they call a chain of machines, and we still make our pasta today. My dad still, at the age of 80, still makes the pasta for the restaurant today. So if you call it an invention, maybe it's the message that we've brought back from Europe to Australia rather than an invention as such. Are you ready there, Sean?
So just one more question. So how do you feel that has contributed to multiculturalism in Ryde?
Well, I mean, Ryde in the 50s and 60s was all farmland. I mean, you're saying about how long people have been in Ryde as well, but if you go to all that Macquarie Park area, that was all chook farms, flower farms and agricultural produce farms. And slowly technology came through, and we started building. But as far as multiculturalism in Ryde, I think everybody that came, you're talking about the Greeks and the Italians and the Lebanese and all cultures, all brought a little bit of their special spice into the area. So when you look at the suburb now, I think multiculturally is a very multiculturally rich suburb in itself. You can knock on any house in the Ryde area and somebody will welcome you in and cook your own specific dish from their own background. So that's the beauty of it.